into this story about Kirsten Gillibrand. So apparently she was speaking at an event recently, and she was confronted by multiple protesters, one after another, and they really took her to task. So I want to get into that confrontation first, and then I want to show you something about Kirsten Gillibrand in reference to her connection to the Israeli lobby. And I want to show you just how much support Israel has started to lose. You're not going to believe who's speaking out now against what's happening in Israel. So this confrontation took place. This was a town hall meeting that Kirsten Gillibrand was actually hosting, and there were multiple pro-Palestinian activists that had some things to say to Kirsten Gillibrand. And here we go.
Gillibrand, how can you say that you represent New Yorkers when 70% of this country demands a ceasefire in Gaza, when 45% of New Yorkers demand a ceasefire, when 53% of New Yorkers do not want to send Israeli funding or military aid anymore?
So let's go back to this activist first, because notice that she brought statistics. She brought the data. She said 45% of New Yorkers demand a ceasefire.
Of New Yorkers demand a ceasefire when 53% of New Yorkers do not want to send Israeli funding or military aid anymore.
Senator Gillibrand, you received $366,000 from pro-Israel lobbies in this past election cycle.
This woman right here. You see, this is what makes me so happy about the youth, the young people, because they're actually doing their homework. They're doing the research. They're checking into these politicians' funds, and they're starting to say, let me say why they have this position in reference to Israel. Who are they taking money from? They're looking at their donors. So again, always follow the money, and then you'll understand why these politicians vote the way that they do in reference to legislation. So I'm so proud of the Gen Z kids. I'm so proud of the youth, because they are really holding these politicians' feet to the fire. And this is different from what I saw with my generation. And I'm a millennial, but I felt like we didn't really hold, like people like Barack Obama. I feel like we didn't really hold his feet to the fire. You know, Barack Obama was reelected. Also, Mitt Romney was a terrible candidate. But that being said, I feel like we weren't doing that. I feel like we weren't looking into the funds to see where are these politicians getting their money from. Now, it happens more so now. And I think Bernie Sanders will give him credit for that, for bringing people's attention to the money in the first damn place. But I still remember when Barack Obama was president, I remember being very disappointed with the way that he governed the country and some of the policy decisions that he made. But I never once thought to follow the money and look to see where he's getting his donations from. But the youth today, they are not playing around. So she is right.
Anymore.
Senator Gillibrand, you received $366,000 from pro-Israel lobbies in this past election cycle. Why are you allowing your interests to be bought by foreign governments?
We're sending billions of our taxpayer dollars to kill children and women. 30,000 people.
So what's wrong with this guy? Like this guy, it's almost like, is he having a conundrum? Like, this is very weird the way this guy reacts. So this woman said, why are you allowing your interests to be bought by a foreign country? This cannot be said enough, ladies and gentlemen, because all these politicians that say they stand with Israel or they represent Israel, we live in the United States. We don't live in Israel. Why are they taking money for their campaigns? Why are they partnering with the Israeli lobby when this is an organization that represents the interests of another country, not the interests of the United States? Remember, JFK, again, he wanted this organization, had a different name back then. He wanted that organization, AIPAC, to actually be held accountable. He wanted them to register as a foreign agent. There's a reason for this. But this guy that comes in here, yikes, yikes.
Bought by foreign governments.
We're sending billions of our taxpayer dollars.
This is holding us back. Notice it's the youth, and no shade to, older people that are watching me, because it's not everybody. But it's the youth, it's the younger people who are speaking up and raising their voices and speaking out against this injustice. But you notice who's at the event. Once again, if you go to these town hall meetings, a lot of times, most of the people that are in there tend to be older people, like boomer generation or silent generation. He's yelling at her saying, stop, stop, stop what? There's an actual genocide that is happening, and he's yelling at her for calling it out, trying to defend and protect Kirsten Gillibrand. Kirsten Gillibrand needs to be called out. All these politicians that take money from the Israeli lobby need to be called out. So he is holding her, they're holding her feet to the fire. But this guy is losing his shit. Like, this is ridiculous.
You're sending billions of our taxpayer dollars to kill children and women. 30,000 people have been murdered.
She's saying 30,000 people have been murdered, and all he can say is stop, stop. And look at the wife sitting there just kind of like, it just, no, she has a right to address her representative. If Kirsten Gillibrand is a senator for New York, she has the right to address what Kirsten Gillibrand has been doing.
You have the money to correct these historic wrongs. If you took the money that you had given to Israel.
Watch this guy right here, older guy. He said, why don't you shut the hell up? You see what's holding the country back, ladies and gentlemen? People who still want to protect the status quo. Some of these people, this is the thing that gets me. Some of the people telling the younger people, stop it with the protest, be quiet, shut up. Some of these people participated in the Vietnam War protest. How far many people have fallen? But he was very nasty.
If you took the money that you had given to Israel, the $15 billion you gave to Israel of our taxpayer money.
You are lying to the people, saying there is a peace process when Israel is the one that has been consistent.
That's that guy again saying, shut up, you stupid. You see how we're spoken? You see how people are spoken to? You see how people are spoken to? Again, how many young people are here? All the young people who are there to protest against what Kirsten Gillibrand has been doing. And you see, it's the older generation that is basically telling us just to sit down and just to go with the status quo. No disruption, no pushback, no confrontation. There was confrontation about the Vietnam War. There was confrontation about the Iraq War. There was confrontation during the Civil Rights Movement. This country is known for confronting things. If you look at the entire history of the United States, all you see is a lot of confrontation.
Declining a ceasefire. 25-year-old Aaron Bushnell gave up his life, immolating. His last words were free Palestine. And this is what you do to political opponents. My family members are being murdered.
Let us speak.
Last week, 3 more.
You heard what this woman said? She just said, my family members are being murdered in Gaza. Someone says, let her speak. I'm assuming they're referring to Kirsten Gillibrand. But this woman just told you her family members are being murdered in Gaza. And they want her to shut up about it.
My family members are being murdered.
Let us speak.
Last week, 3 more of my family members have been murdered in Gaza. She's not answering though. She's not answering.
That's a good one to get Kirsten Gillibrand with, because she claims to be like this woman's advocate and protecting women's rights. That's her really big thing. In fact, she ran on that, but she doesn't care about the women. Kirsten Gillibrand cares about money, because she ain't say nothing about all those women and children that have been killed in Gaza. Not one thing. Boy, I tell you, she had this coming.
Hamas doesn't want to return the hostages.
They offered to return the hostages. That is a lie. They offered to return the hostages.
So there's Kirsten Gillibrand trying to lie and saying that Hamas doesn't want to return the hostages. Like I said, these people, they know They know that the politicians are lying. So this person stood up and said, that is a lie. Hamas offered to return the hostages. So you see how, guys, they don't just lie when they have these interviews on mainstream media. These politicians lie at these town halls as well. And it took you really need to have people who actually know what's going on to appear at these events and to push back on the lies that the politicians are telling.
You motherfuckers decline! Every single morning I wake up and I see Palestinians dying day after day after day after day, body after body after body, with our taxpayer dollars funding it.
How many Palestinian children need to be killed before you call for a ceasefire? You have blood on your hands. My people deserve to live. My people deserve to live. You have blood on your hands.
He said, my people deserve to live. You have blood on your hands. So that was Kirsten Gillibrand confronted at a town hall in New York. Apparently, she really did not want to hear from the constituents that have criticism for her. But I want to show you why. You have to, again, follow the money and see where Kirsten Gillibrand has been getting her money from. So this is open secrets. This is public information, free public information. Let's see where she has been receiving her money from. You can see top industry says securities and investments, top contributor, Davis Polk and Ward. She's very much corporate. Okay. And there it is. The top recipient is David Polk and Ward Well with over $155,000. But the second highest recipient is AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, with over $151,000 donated to Kirsten Gillibrand. You can do this for any of your representatives. Look them up on Open Secrets and find out if they're taking money from AIPAC. Then you understand why they're voting to give more money to Israel. Then you understand why they're lying, saying that Hamas doesn't want to return the hostages. Kirsten Gillibrand, and I called it out from day one. She isn't trying to appeal to voters like the Palestinian people. She is trying to appeal to people that live in suburbia, that want to maintain the status quo. Now, the people in the audience, the guy saying shut up and all this stuff, those are the people that are keeping Kirsten Gillibrand in office. But there is someone running against Kirsten Gillibrand, and that's Diane Sare. Diane Sare is not running through the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. And if it were me, if I was Diane Sare, I would be calling Kirsten Gillibrand out every chance that I got. If I were Diane Sare, if she would have been available, I would have showed up at that town hall myself and called Kirsten out for what she really is. So the way that you get someone like Kirsten Gillibrand out of that seat is you have to organize and mobilize the non-voters. You have to get the youth who stood up at that town hall. You got to get them to come out and support you. You have to go to the people who gave up on voting because they're like, the system doesn't help us. You got to go get those people. And that's how you get a Kirsten Gillibrand out of that seat. And we've seen it happen before. We've seen people be able to unseat these status quo, corrupt, bougie politicians. And that's exactly what she is. Running on women's rights. Get out of here. Get out of here. I told you that Israel is losing support. I want you to see this video from a veteran that is going to explain to you that they know for a fact that Israel knows that they are killing civilians and not Hamas. Listen to what she says. This is a very revealing video.
We have technology that we can see exactly who's in these locations and buildings. So they're targeting and bombing homes, knowing who and how many children were actually inside.
Everybody heard that? So she's a veteran. We'll say this again. She's trying to tell you from experience that they have the technology so they can actually see who's inside.
We have technology that we can see exactly who's in these locations and buildings. So they're targeting and bombing homes, knowing who and how many children were actually inside. My name is Josephine Gilbo. I'm a 17-year Army veteran. I recently got out of the military last year. Having that background as an intelligence officer and understanding what defense actually is, I can see clearly that this is not self-defense. The civilian casualties is catastrophic. They're targeting homes filled with children. The elite that sit in Capitol Hill sit there and lie over and over and over. I just want to highlight one of the biggest awakenings that I think I've had the last few weeks coming here and lobbying with the senators and the congressmen is just how corrupt our government is. And that anyone that's in the military is simply just one chess piece that they use at their leisure for their own internal gain to protect their own internal assets and money.
There it is, the money part. This woman here, shout out to Stu Peters for sharing this. 17-year Army intelligence officer blows whistle on official Israeli narrative. Protect this woman at all costs. I want to speak on something that she mentioned there about the technology. If we go back to one of the videos that Julian Assange published, there's actually an officer saying there are kids in that van. Some of you have seen that video on social media before Twitter removed it. There is an officer saying on the audio, there are kids in that van. You can see on the video that they are actually able to see who was inside the van. And the US military, they went ahead and they blew up that van anyway. That's one of the reasons why the US is trying to make an example out of Julian Assange. I can't show you the video on here. It's not even on social media anymore because they removed it once it started to go viral. They can see. And if they have the technology to see if there's women and children in those homes, they have the technology to see who's in your house. Everybody pick up on that? They can see what you're doing too, if they wanted to. That's the whole surveillance issue. Think about that for a second. But they're losing support from the military. And I don't think I've ever seen this within my adult life. Shout out to Talia Jane, an autonomous network of active duty service members across nearly all U.S. armed forces have released an open letter condemning Israel's genocide in Gaza. This, you can't make this up, folks. Open letter from concerned U.S. military service members. With the greatest respect, we seek to reaffirm our oath as proud military service members of the U.S. In no way do we seek to make our political or partisan statement discredit any of our federal institutions or claim to represent the Department of Defense in an official capacity in accordance with the Hatch Act of 1939 and the standards of conduct set out by the Uniform Code of Military Justice. We acknowledge that all branches of the U.S. military are values-based organizations that emphasize that all deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. We are privileged to serve and do so with the utmost pride and love for our country and Constitution. War crimes are not a partisan or political issue. Genocide is not a partisan or political issue. Crimes against humanity are not partisan or political issue. Human rights are not partisan or political issue. Freedom is not a partisan or political issue. It is undeniably evident that the IDF are repeatedly and systematically committing war crimes in Gaza. Support for the conduct of the IDF is unacceptable and inconsistent with our values in the U.S. Armed Forces. It is incumbent upon us to hold those we call our partners and allies to the same standards that we hold ourselves as experts and professionals. We cannot defend the indefensible. We cannot abide by such a double standard, as there is no legal or moral gray area when service members of any nation target and kill civilians. It puts a bad taste on the military, regardless if it's IDF. It puts like this dark cloud over the military across the world. what the IDF is doing. The laws of war either apply to all of us or none of us. We strongly condemn the genocidal actions of the IDF in Gaza. The terror tactics that are being used by the IDF against civilians in Gaza must stop at once. With our close ties, the wanton misconduct of the IDF makes it difficult to uphold good order and discipline within our own ranks. The secondary and tertiary effects of the IDF's misconduct in Gaza, or tertiary, effects of the IDF's misconduct in Gaza undermine our own morale, readiness, and ultimately our mission to protect the American people and defend our Constitution. Our greatest leaders have impressed upon us that it takes personal courage to stop somebody when they are doing something they should not be doing. The U.S. military is the finest in the world because our unwavering discipline. Our all-volunteer force is a global force for good, with our ranks filled with patriotic Americans who boldly defend our country against enemies, both foreign and domestic, and have done so enthusiastically since 1775. We are uncompromising in our dedication to our duty and to our mission. We hold ourselves accountable and to the highest standards and expect the same for those we call allies and partners. God bless America. Concerned U.S. military service members. Now, I would say that the U.S. military doesn't actually do or represent what's good. There's a lot of things that have been happening. And Julian Assange revealed those things, because our service members are also guilty of war crimes. It's not just the IDF. This is across the board. But the fact that you have these confrontations happening week after week, we just talked about the AOC confrontation, this confrontation that happened against Kirsten Gillibrand, those protesters calling out where her money comes from, the donors, the fact that she's connected to AIPAC. And the fact that you now have, shout out to Aaron Bushnell, rest in peace, because now you have the U.S. military, armed forces members speaking out against what the IDF is doing and what the U.S. government is supporting. I haven't seen this in my adult life, and I think that this is very telling. Israel is losing support.